Welcome to today's webcast, where we will talk about closing the gap in customer experience. My name is Demet Tunc. I lead the Customer Experience Council at the Conference Board, which is a peer networking group of senior executives. Today, my speaker is from Kantar, Barbara Cador, and she's the global head of CX+, where she will talk about it in a couple of minutes. Before that, let me tell you a couple of tips about the webcast. Throughout the webcast, you can ask questions in the box that is provided for you. Actually, we would like this to be a very interactive one. Barbara might also pose you some questions, and you may also ask some questions to her directly, and I will let her know what your questions are. You can share this webcast within your network with your colleagues if they have an interest in understanding more about customer experience. At the end of the webcast, there is a very small evaluation form which will take you a couple of seconds to fill in. Please give us your feedback so that we're able to improve ourselves for the future webcasts. Also, by joining this webcast, you can earn CP credits. To be able to do so, you need to type in your name in the box that will be provided 3 times throughout the webcast. Okay, that was all about the tips. Now let me introduce you to Barbara. As I said at the start, she's the global head of Customer Experience Plus at Kantar, and she advises teams and the clients of Kantar on CX performance, on benchmarking, and the financial implications that are caused through a platform which Kantar has developed, which is called CX+. Before joining Kantar, Barbara has worked in several industries, including luxury and beauty goods, as well as financial services, mainly in the PR and marketing space. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, Barbara. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Demet. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Well, Barbara, today we're going to talk about closing the CX gap, and it's a hot topic in most of the companies because everybody is talking about becoming more customer-centric, which is easily said, but it's very hard to actually be able to do that. And today you are going to tell us why is it that difficult to be more customer-centric, and also its impact. I remember you telling me one day that a superior customer experience increases the brand value more than 10 times faster than the others. So having a superior customer experience is actually becoming more important than the products, the services that are provided by the companies, because what counts is the experience in the end. So could you please take us your insights, your thoughts on this and your point of view, please?
Yes, thank you, Demet. Thank you very much for the introduction. So yes, today I think we're going to have a closer look at some nuggets of insights that we have gathered throughout this year when launching our CX Plus platform, helping clients to understand how they can step change their approach to customer centricity, and of course truly close what we call the experience gap. So the agenda for today is going to be essentially about this, but also we would want to take a bit of a step back and think about the kind of age and era we're living in, because this has very important implications on how we behave and how we consume products. We will want to look at certain stereotypes that affect the consumptions, and also understand why customer centricity and gathering the experience advantage is not just the right thing to do for a business nowadays, but it is a business fundamental in order to really unleash financial growth. Okay. We will want to look at the gap between what some of the ambitions are that business have nowadays and what consumers really perceive when they experience the brand, and then also discuss what are the organizational challenges that big companies today face in achieving this customer centricity, also in connection with issues around trust and technology. So these are our points for today, and I hope what you will get away with are some inspiration around how to transform customer information into real insight that can really impact your business, how to try and look at a different mindset when it comes to customer centricity, eliminating silos and thinking about a single vision, and also look at the balance between trust and technology with a slightly different perception. So let me start with what we at Kantar preach and discuss every day with many, many clients, and we're talking about really the top 100 industries of this world. This experience is really everything nowadays. We live in the experience economy. We don't sell products or just services, but we sell experiences. So winners and losers in business today are really measured by the experiences that they provide their consumers with, and organization really measure themselves based on the experience that they provide and their customer love. So experience is a bit of a humorous way of saying it, everything. And we have gone from being a society, and that's a very, very important point that affects a lot of us, from being a society that was really thinking about possession as the way to happiness, especially after the Second World War, to becoming a society. So it was, it was the quest after money, after possessing more than the neighbor, more than the colleague, more than the brother-in-law. So it's the keeping up with the Joneses that we all call. And we have become a society that was focused on what I'm saying, on possession, to being a society that is really focusing on moments and memories. So there's been a dramatic change in priorities, and many people realize that what they really remember in life, when really thinking back about memorable moments, whether that's Christmas, whether that's birthday, what you remember is the experience, is the people that surrounded you, is the location you were in, it's the emotion that you experienced, rather than, the color of the cake or the presents that you've had. So, we are starting to really prioritizing experience and lifestyle. So we've become from accumulation to access, and from possessing to what we call renting or just experiencing different moments. Okay, and this is a very important point that I wanted to make as a first. And this has very important implications on our industry and on many business overall. We know, and this is math, this is data from over 50,000 people that we've interviewed, that about 60% of millennials, so the people that now start consuming and that are going to be the consumers of the future, they prefer to spend their money on experiences. This is something that people say all over the world, and actually it is true for millennials, but it's true for the general population too. They say, I'd rather spend money on experience than on material thing. Even if you're a baby boomer, even if you're 50, 60, the differences are not that dramatic as we see in these graphs, which is the amount of people who have told us they prioritize experience over material goods. And
that's quite interesting, Barbara, because what you're saying is that people are ready to pay for the experience. So actually, they could price premium any experience that is better than the other one. It's not the product that counts. But what I also think is important is not the the satisfaction or the NPS at each and every touch point, but it's the whole end-to-end experience that the consumer goes through. And I believe that is the final price that they're willing to pay, because it could be very high at one single touch point, but whenever the whole end-to-end experience is not that positive, the price equation might work in the reverse direction. What do you think?
Yes, exactly. And I think you're making a very important point, Demet, around, this holistic view of the experience, rather than looking at bits and pieces of experience in silos. This is how our mind works, and this is how we memorize emotions as a holistic, experience. And of course, and we see it in many businesses around the world, you are willing to pay a premium price for an outstanding experience. And very often you are not willing to pay a premium price for just a product, which is why, many companies are losing the price battle, because they are losing in a product setting context. Mm-hmm. This is why really it's a financial business imperative to understand how we can facilitate that experience. And interestingly, many people say, well, that's probably true in, the more advanced markets, the more mature markets. They're getting bored of this accumulation and this materialistic behavior. Well, you see from this graph, actually, India and South Africa, who are markets, who have their issues, social and economic issues, they are society who are extremely driven towards experience. So it's not only about the social class, it is truly, a general global phenomenon. And I think that's very important to really get that in our head.
And Barbara, I have a question on the slide you showed before. Is this the data across the industries, and are there any differences in terms of paying premium for an experience per different industry? Is e-commerce, for example, a bit more advanced than the tangible retail sector?
Yeah, so I think the difference is, this data that you see here is focusing primarily on banking services, but we know that the numbers are very similar across many industries, and the differences between different sectors are, I wouldn't say there's a general global picture. I think that depends very much on the geography you're moving yourself in. And that also depends on the level of development of the single geography you are in, to answer your question.
Great. Well, I have also a question from the audience. Does the experience premium and focus relate to B2B and industrial as well as B2C?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. So as I said, we've gathered most of our data this year on banking, but we know that this perception and this business importance around experience relates to all industry, whether that's B2B and B2C. And going forward this year and next year, we are going to collect many more insights and data around different industries, e-commerce, among others, as you mentioned before, Demet. So I would definitely say this is a phenomenon that absolutely affects everybody.
Okay, clear. Thank you.
And, I think we as a human being, and I think also as industries, we love putting people in little boxes. It makes it easier for us to deal with the bigger issue if we can create little boxes. And when I talk about little boxes, I want to talk about stereotypes and the fact that people tend to think that if we talk about the digital world, technology, openness to deal, with online business is something that younger target group are more drawn into, and you have to differentiate people by age. But actually, we see that online and offline behavior doesn't align with stereotypes. We have found that across generation, there are similar levels of polarization when it comes to the level of comfort with technology. Yeah. So about 1/3 of people from both generations are perfectly comfortable with using online only customer service. And we see that. I mean, there are small differences, but you have to understand that between centennials and baby boomers, there are potentially up to 2 generations. Potentially, it's the grandmother and the grandson in here that you see. The differences are not that dramatic. And I think that's also one very important point of today's society. Stereotypes don't exist anymore when it comes to online, offline behavior and perception towards technology. And I think this is a really important point that we need to make when we think about customer centricity. So, I've hinted at this before, and saying that we know that having the experience, being a business that has the experience advantage really pays off. And I just want to show a bit what I mean with this and why this is a business imperative. So this is data that is in the public domain, by the way, and we know that within a range of barely 5 years, from 2017 to 2022, the industry of customer experience is expected to triplicate, reaching nearly $17 billion worth of an industry in 2022. That's literally around the corner. We're talking 2 years from now. This is how fast this industry is growing. It's the fastest growing industry of all, the customer experience industry. And this is some of our data. That's the BrandZ data. BrandZ is one of our global platforms that measures the top companies' brand value worth. And we have made an analysis of 12 years worth of growth in brand value. What we wanted to understand is what is the most important criteria for brand value growth. And actually what we found is that it's brand experience. The experience is the most important factor for brand value growth. Brands that facilitate an outstanding experience grow up to 10 times more than other brands who are underperforming in the experience space. So this is literally a big dollar sign that many of us are leaving on the table if we don't focus in the right way on experience. And that's yet another very important data point. Fortune 100 companies very often have a person sitting at the board, at their board table, in the C-suite that represents the customer, whether you call him Chief Customer Officer, Chief Client Officer, whatever the name is, let's call him a CCO. The difference is between a company that is a Fortune 100 company and a company that is among the Fortune 1000 companies. So, to a lesser extent successful, is having a CCO, having someone who represents the client who sits at your board table. Yeah, this is how much focus some of the most important companies put on this. So truly
quite interesting. I mean, you're talking about a C-suite here. So if customer centricity, if customer experience is in the agenda of the board, it shows the vision and the direction of the leadership. So, but it starts there, but I believe it doesn't end there, because every employee in the company needs to have the customer-centric mindset to really truly live the customer centricity. But I fully understand, and I also believe in what you say, that it starts at the C-suite level, otherwise it would never work.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very important point, Demet. It absolutely starts at the C-suite level. The sponsorship and the mentoring for the customer centricity starts at the board, because it needs to empower and give the whole company the resources and the mindset necessary to make that transformational change. You can't expect your employee to understand the vision that you're trying to give and to bring that to life on their own.
Exactly.
So it is absolutely a board responsibility to really trigger it down through the whole organization, and to empower your employee to really make a difference, to really be empowered to say, part of your responsibility is to give that outstanding experience to the customers. And you're not just, a tool in a bigger toolbox. You are a human being as an employee who can make a massive difference for somebody. And we see that every day, so that is really a very important point.
That's interesting. And Barbara, you were saying that the CX industry is the industry that has the fastest, highest growth rate. And you've mentioned the number, 17 billion, 16 billion, I think. So do you have a split of that total number, maybe the big portions? Where is it spent? Where does the investment go in?
Whether in terms of industries, in terms of sectors?
Not in terms of industries, but if the total spending is that big, what are the topics or the areas that the companies are investing today in the CX space? That's my question.
That's there. So I don't have hard data, but I have some hypotheses from talking to our clients.
And what is the hypothesis then?
The hypothesis, and this is a hypothesis, so I don't have hard data. I'm saying that again. We're in market research and very, very serious about, stating data points. But my hypothesis is that we spend an outstanding and maybe outrageous amount of money in technology. And that's a point that I want to talk about in the following. So when I mean technology, I mean machine learning, chatbots, and whatever helps make a slightly different customer experience. I think there's an enormous amount of investment in the technological space of experience. And I think we'll come to that later, but that's a very important point, and I've got 2 points that I want to bring to the audience today when it comes to technology, which I think may help make them think differently about that.
Okay.
So coming back to my point, what we're always saying is every experience has the potential to make or break a relationship, and that's not just a cool thing to say. We've seen, whole industries, brands, and companies under threat because they haven't been able to really connect to their consumers. They haven't been able to really be truly experience aligned. And I'm not saying it's easy. We know the kind of environment brands are living in today. There's more voice, there's more choice, there's more noise, more competition. We have a consumer that is extremely knowledgeable, that knows exactly what he or she wants, when they want it, and whatever they want, they're gonna shout it over the rooftops for everybody to hear. It's a challenging environment we live in, but it's also an environment that has an enormous amount of opportunities if we manage it well. And there's something very interesting which we've discussed with many, many industries is, you know, there's a tendency to think, oh, if I don't get it right today, I'm going to get it right tomorrow. That's a bit of a, you know, trial and error approach. Going to try this today, going to try that tomorrow. Actually, there is an enormous amount of sectors where you don't have that many opportunities to connect with your consumers. I mean, think about how often do you take up a mortgage, or you buy a new car, or you stay in a specific hotel. You don't have that many opportunities to connect, to really connect with that consumers and to really facilitate that experience. So you know, this kind of trial and error approach very often is something you can't really be going on with because you're missing very important and very unique touch points with your consumers. Yeah. So, you know, and you know, many markets, we've looked at banking, for instance, this year, and you know, banking services, retail banking is an extremely disrupted market. It's a market that has gone through, you know, I know that many sectors say, oh God, you know, we're a sector under threat. We're going through a huge transformation. Many sectors are going through a huge transformation. Thinking about retail banking, they have gone through a massive trust issues. You know, think about the economic recession, the scandals. They are going through a massive transformation when it comes to technology. They have many new players entering the industry. Think about neobanks or the new digital banks, but also think about completely, you know, brands that enter the space from a completely different dimension. Think about Google that is now entering this space, or Apple that has entered the space. So, you know, that's where experience, when you can't make a differentiation through your product, is becoming the key element of differentiation, and the only element you have to really survive and make a difference. And what I want to come now is this massive gaping hole that there is between the ambitions that many of our C-suites have in many industries and what the customer and their clients really perceive. Yeah. And I've mentioned that today before in the introduction. So we know that 91% of CEOs believe that customer centricity is essential to driving their business growth. So there's a huge amount of awareness. You know, the C-suite knows that it's essential for survival to really be a customer-centric business. But if you ask their customers, their own customers, what they think about this brand or this company, in average, globally, about only 16% of these customers rate their brands as truly customer-centric. This is a massive gaping, you know, hole. And this is what happens. And this is part of the bigger problem here.
Exactly.
And that, yeah.
Exactly. And this is a huge difference, 91% versus 16%. But also, it's the 95% is the response of the CEOs. So if you were to ask the employees of a company if they think that the leadership or the executive level, the CEOs, are thinking in favor of the customers, I wonder what the response would be, whether that would be closer to 91 or closer to 16. Probably.
I'd love to ask the audience that question, actually. That's a very interesting question to ask the audience, whether, you know, how much, what is the, you know, do you think that your company is truly customer-centric? Do you think that the company you work in is really putting the customer truly at the center of every effort? That's a very interesting question. I'd love to get some feedbacks about that, you know, because it's tough. It's not easy. You know, there's a lot of different diverging objectives and goals within a company. And unfortunately, along the way, you know, often we forget about you know, about the really putting our customer at the center of our efforts.
Okay. So let me repeat the question for the audience. The question is, from a scale of 1 to 10, let's say, can you please give a response on what you think your company is at a level in terms of customer centricity? So 10 means that it's a very good score, 1 means it's a very low score, so you're not customer centric at all. It's also, you can type in your answers, and when we have a few answers, I will let Barbara know the answers.
Oh, I'd love to see that. I'm actually very curious to see the kind of answers.
And we are getting several responses, 6 and 7 mostly. One person says 8, the others are all around 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, that's more or less what I expected. I like the fact that there's an 8.
There is now 2 8s.
Ah, okay, okay. Impressive. I'm pretty impressed. 8 is a very good number. You know, if we think that 10 is perfection, 8 is incredibly good. And I would have expected probably a lot around the 5 or the 6, 5, 6, or 7. I think this awareness is really helping improve many businesses, but I think the organizational structure and the business imperative, you know, the day-to-day is sometimes going against the customer centricity. I think that's really very interesting. Thank you very much for the interaction. I've learned. But also I wanted to, you know, we've seen 16%, and 60% is quite a dramatic number. First time I saw this 16%, I was like, oh my God. But actually, you know, it's very different by market. So, you know, a market like the US is proportionally much more client-centric, and this is what the customers say, the human beings, the people who buy the experience say. So 32%. You know, there's still quite a hole between a 91 and a 32, but it's much better than, you know, other countries. And here we see Spain or Poland being very low, around a 9 or a 8. So, you know, there's many differences here, and looking at these differences in detail is what really gives us a lot of insight in, you know, what are the challenges and the issues that we can help solve. So, you know, and linking to this, we've also asked consumers around the world how delighted they are about their last experience. And the delight with an experience is one of the KPIs that we measure, that are, you know, one of the central KPI for us to measure a brand's performance in the experience space. So the amount of customers that really say, yes, I was delighted about the experience. And only 18% say that they are truly delighted about their last experience with a brand, if we ask them. So 18% means that in, you know, 82% of all other cases, we have, you know, left not a memorable impression. We have left potentially, as a business, money on the table to really get a customer engaged, to make a customer an ambassador of our brand. Yeah,
well, that's a very low number, Barbara. But I'm not, as a consumer, surprised to see that low number. It's also good that you measure the emotion. I think the question on how delighted you are is measuring the emotion. So do you think that the advance on technology could be the cause of that low rating, or would you foresee some other causes for an 18% response on being delighted?
I think that's actually a very, very important point that you make, Demet, and that links well with the point I wanted to make as a following of this slide about emotion and delight as primary human emotion towards an experience. You know, and there's a point around the delight with an experience, and technology may be standing in a way of creating that delight, which I wanted to make. So, you know, we often imagine the role of technology, that technology can play in our lives in the future, and we think, well, we're becoming more connected, you know, connected glasses, augmented reality, you know, chatbots, and there are countless, you know, articles and visions and trends that discuss what this means for brands, marketing, and customer experience. And it's all very valid, you know, it's a very valid discussion to have. But what we found out at Kantar, discussing with many of our clients, but also with our CX Plus data, is that when we talk about technology, there are two main issues. The first is that too often technology is being added into a product or a service to save costs, instead of using technology as it should be used, which is a platform, an engine to connect better and faster and in more convenient way to the human being. Technology's primarily reason isn't to save costs. Technology's primary reason is to add value, is to be an engine, is to be something that helps connect to the client, to the consumer in a different way. And that's a completely different standpoint. Yeah? So that's the first issue. Technology isn't a cost saver. Don't start with technology at this level. And the second point is that technology isn't a substitute for an experience. When we're confused about the kind of experience we want to give our consumers, we tend to think, oh, I'm probably going to add a chatbot. I'm probably going to add some gadget or something gimmicky into the experience because that brings newness in, and that's going to bring some excitement, and that's going to give us a differentiated experience. No, it doesn't. If it doesn't connect with the expectation of your consumers, if it doesn't add value, it's just noise in the background. So I think these are two very important points which we've been discussing, you know, with our clients a lot this year, and which I think are the main points that we want to make about technology. Yeah?
That's very interesting. I just would like to remind to the audience that you can ask questions to Barbara at any point.
Thank you, Demet. And linked to the technology, you know, in the age of experience and the main issues we see with technology, what we've found out is that 83% of consumers find what we call the omnichannel experience hard. So the switch between online and offline. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that already. When you experience a brand online, you research something, maybe your product, or, you know, you check a site, you try and inform yourself about whether that's a banking service or, you know, a shoe brand, it doesn't matter. And then you enter the retail space, or you experience the brand in its physical dimension, and you're confused because it looks like a completely different world. It doesn't even look like the same company. And how often do you deal with a company and you say, oh, I've seen this or that offer on your online platform, and they, you know, tell you, oh no, actually it's a different provider. They have nothing to do with you. And you, but it's your brand. This is you. So no, it's not us. You know, it's just an online service that we have, but they have a completely different portfolio and service. You know, and this is exactly what causes the confusion. Is, you know, the omnichannel experience is tough for consumers, and there's a huge amount of disconnect, you know, between the online and offline world still. It shouldn't be that way, but it still is the case. You know, I think that in many ways it's a question of too many silos in organization and teams not working together and not understanding that the client is one human being. It's one person. He is on a journey to experience your brand in its different dimension. And, you know, if you have a brand team working here and a marketing team working there and a digital team working there, never talking to each other, everybody does their thing, well, this is exactly the kind of experience you're going to give to your customer. It's a disrupted experience that creates noise and isn't, you know, isn't understandable for a consumer.
We have a question, yeah, Barbara, on this topic from the audience. What kind of technology bring added value and more customer centricity?
I think this is this can be different for each brand and each industry. There isn't one technology that works for everybody. Gosh, otherwise I would, you know, we would put this technology everywhere, like the garlic. There isn't just one. It depends on the kind of brand you are, the kind of sector you're moving yourself in, you know, what happens in your space, if you're in a disrupted market or not. So there isn't one size fits all when it comes to technology. Sometimes you need it and sometimes you don't, you know, and that's the thing. Sometimes, you know, technology can be a value add to connect to a human being, but it isn't a must. And I think we tend to forget that. Now, what is a must is a seamless omni-channel experience. It's to be coherent in who you are. It's not to be schizophrenic and to give a completely different image in the online world versus the offline world. Yeah? This is a fundamental. But technology is not a must. If it doesn't add value, it isn't a must at all, actually. Just, you know, I think it's a bit of a provocative idea, I know, but I think it's an idea that we seriously need to be thinking about. And, you know, what technology will work for you is something that needs to be looked at in detail based on what your clients, you know, expect from you as a brand, what your brand promise is conveying, I think. As the question to a certain extent. So my point is we need to stop thinking technology first, and we need to start thinking people first, human first. Yeah. I think we need to stop thinking about shoppers or consumers as technology users. We're not technology users. We are people who think and feel and behave in a certain way towards a certain brand. Yeah. And I think that's the point when, you know, in the rush towards all things technological and digital, we're guilty of neglecting these very human, tangible, empathetic and intimate human side. And we've seen very, very interesting example in the banking space this year where neobanks, purely digital banks, so banks who have no branches, who have, you know, no direct physical contact to any customers, still managed to really connect with their consumers and facilitate a really outstanding experience because they brought the human at the center of the attention. And dealing with this brand didn't feel like you were dealing with technology, but you were, you were dealing with an online platform, but it felt as if you were dealing with a human being. So sometimes you don't need a human to give, you know, that empathetic, intimate, tangible human side. And you don't need that whole amount of, you know, gimmicky, gadgety technology to give a differentiated experience. But what you need to do always is think people first. Yeah. So
then I believe it first starts with the people strategy of the companies, and then it needs to be transferred to the end user, to the customer, to the client strategy. The way the companies define their vision on their own people plays a very important role, if we
Absolutely.
say people first.
Absolutely, absolutely, Demet. That's absolutely my point, and that's the big, big mistake we're making today. Is we are absolutely brainwashed about, oh, we need to go digital, we need to go technological. What's the kind of technology we need to add on? No, ask yourself, what is the kind of experience? What is the kind of experience you want to convey? Do you know that? Do you know? Can you define in very simple words what is the experience that you want to convey to your consumers? What's your brand promise? What is it that you promised them you were going to give? And how do you want to bring that to life? What is the kind of experience that you need to give them to, address this promise? This is the question that we need to answer. Yeah. So, it's the world we live in is complicated. I mean, that's the way it is. It's also full of opportunities if we understand, step back, and think about what we're actually trying to do. And I want to come to, some of the points that actually make customer centricity often more complex than it is. So, and these are the 3 points. Too much data, infobesity, siloed thinking, and lack of focus. And I want to cover very quickly each of these points. And I hope each of these 3 points is going to give a bit of inspiration. So, we suffer from infobesity, and a large amount of CMOs say, actually, I've got more data than I can even digest. I have no idea what to do with all this data. So we are gorging on an unconsumable amount of data, and it's becoming dysfunctional. Data saturation is everywhere. And there's actually now a trend that it's going from big data to small data to look at the individual data. But, in the past, we've believed that more is better. There was this, big data thing, but it's actually not true. So, the problem is our ability to connect data hasn't been matched by an ability to support, filter, and manage the data. So that has created really a bad practice, and the right approach is the approach I've mentioned before. It's to start with the business objectives and the key questions you want to answer. What's your brand promise? What is it? How can you connect with the expectation? What is the kind of experience you want to give? Can you formulate this? Is the point that I'm trying to make? And this will answer the first point of a solid process. That leads me to the second point. Siloed thinking. And I've said it before, many companies collect data just because they can. You can, and it's all out there, and it's all available, and you've got tons of it, so you go on and you collect it. But the problem is that each individual, each team tends to identify different data sets that they'd like to connect, and they work in silos. So they either buy the same data sets without knowing of each other, or they have completely different data sets that actually partly contradict each other because they look at the same issue from a different perspective. Yeah. So you end up having contradicting strategy, and that's a real problem. So without a systematic approach to collecting and managing this data, you end up being completely schizophrenic. And the first point of it is to eliminate silos. Business leaders really need to stop segmenting expertise. You need to understand that this is one person. That means a seamless experience, whether I'm in store, at home, on a tablet, on my mobile, digital, analog. It's one vision, one person, one language, one strategy. Nobody wants to know. No consumer is interested in knowing whether that's the marketing strategy, the digital strategy, or the brand strategy. I don't care. I don't care. And nobody cares. That's the thing. So I think this siloed thinking needs absolutely to stop. And we have seen that the brands that manage to really eliminate the silos have completely step changed their approach to customer centricity. And this has made such a difference. And the third point is the lack of focus. there's too much trial and error, and I've said it before. We've got a lot of data, we try different things, but we try different things too often and for a too short amount of time. Yeah? So, at the end of the day, we've spent a massive amount of money on trying 10 different things because we don't really know what we're trying to achieve. And we don't have the patience as businesses, and we know how it is, to really work it out and to really wait and see the results of our effort. So, this is one, winning in the age of experience, it takes patience. It takes bravery, but it also takes patience. I mean, Amazon has been very unsuccessful its first years. I mean, if we would have looked at Amazon, they probably would have closed up, but they knew they were on the right track and they had the patience and the coherence to just sit it out and go and be, consistent with their effort. And this is something that we don't see often in our world. So, that's the third point I want to make. If we manage to address these 3 points, this would make a massive.
So what you're saying is that if the companies focus on these 3 issues that they are facing today, they would improve their customer centricity along the line.
Absolutely. I think if we would manage as a business in the C-suite to take these 3 points and hands-on work on eliminating these 3 issues, it would make such a massive difference. Such a massive difference in mindset, in perspective, in the vision that you're able to facilitate to your employee and your customers. It would be massive. But it takes bravery. It takes someone to take it on and to say we're going to have the patience to look this through to the end. And this is, something that not many business have. So yes, definitely. I think this, summarizes some of the issues that we see. And to help many of our clients who have gone through these processes and who have said, we struggle with that. How can we approach this? This is how we approach this. We have a 4-step philosophy to help our clients to really become truly customer-centric. And I've said it, I'll repeat it. The first is developing a vision, knowing what you want to give, knowing the type of experience you want to provide. The second is define the KPIs, embed the operational change, and ensure that, without the KPIs, you can't really define how you're progressing towards the vision. Yeah? Activate this customer-centric behavior. So that means through the organization, really address the resources and the employees and everybody within the organization, from operations to supply chain to marketing to digital, whomever. Even the woman at the reception, she needs to know what we're trying to achieve. This is truly customer centricity. And the fourth is obviously understanding, monitor the business impact, and course correct. You're not going to get it right the first time. But if you've done your homework, you just need to have the patience to see it through. So I think, this was for me, more or less what I wanted to convey. And I hope there's been some inspiration for the audience. I hope there's some ideas that you can gather and some conversation that can kickstart, because I think there's really so many opportunities, so much business that is lying on the table and that is there to be really taken. And I think there's really so much we can do in the experience space. Oh. So this is back to you, Demet.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. The insights you provide and also the tips that you provide to be more customer-centric for the companies are quite interesting. Actually, they are not like rocket science. It seems that every company would naturally do it, but we don't see it as happening and as lived because there's a big gap between the ambition and the reality. So I think it gives several tips for, especially for the C-suite and for the whole people, employees working in the companies on being more customer-centric. If there are any questions, I can still take it. We have a couple of more minutes left. In the meantime, while waiting for the questions, I just want to let you know, remind you that I'm leading the Customer Experience Council, which is a peer networking group of senior executives. And we have several councils at the conference board. So if you're interested with any of them, please reach out to our colleagues, and we will be happy to see you amongst us. And one more time, at the end, there will be an evaluation form. So please take a couple of seconds to fill in that form, and so that we improve for future webcasts. Okay, well, Barbara, it seems that I do not have any more questions. It was quite an interactive session, actually. Thank you for sharing all your insights and your thoughts. And thanks to the audience for their attendance.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, and you all have a good day.